In the most recent chapter of One Piece, 1157, we learn a very interesting piece of information that, for better or for worse, might shed more light onto the God Valley incident. And even if it does not tell the full story, I think it might give us a hint as to why so many people arrived there. Now, in chapter 1156, we get the scene when Garp was called to Pirate Island, and at first, he was not planning on going. And what he says is that it is natural pirates are converging on the island because the world government stole their crown jewel, so of course, they're going to come to get it back. Now, at first, I thought this might have meant some sort of treasure or one of the devil fruits that we know were meant as a prize for the celestial dragons, such as Kaido's or Kuma's fruits. But in 1157, we learn that this might not be the case. Here is what the narrator tells us when Shaki sets up her bar on Hachinosu. Shakuraku was like a flower blooming in a dry wasteland. Her very presence enriched the island. The inhabitants of Hachinosu came to covet her as a treasure, an irreplaceable crown jewel. Unfortunately, a treasure is always the inevitable target of theft. Now, I think this is nearly spelling it out for us. We can pretty much assume that the crown jewel Garp was talking about is Shaki herself, which means at some point between the current part of the Loki flashback and the God Valley incident, either Cypherpole or the God's Knights managed to kidnap Shaki and hide her either on God Valley or some other location before bringing her there for the games. Roger mentioned it had been a year, and now I am thinking that might pertain to the amount of time that Shaki was actually missing for. It is also likely that she was one of the prizes set for the winners of the games at God Valley. Now, when Garp was called in, one of the things he wondered was who released the intel that let everyone know to come there. And there's a pretty good chance that was Ginny. We already know from Kuma's flashback that she released intel on the other prizes to try and create a scenario for them to escape. And so if she knew about Shaki in the same way as she knew about the devil fruits that she mentioned, it stands to reason that was part of the message that she released. Now, with this information, Roger showing up is really no surprise at all, as we know how he feels about Shaki, and he was already chasing her when she was on the Kuja Pirates, so there's really no surprise that he chases her to God Valley as well. But I am also not surprised about the Rocks Pirates anymore either, after what we saw in the last chapter. And this also makes the scene in chapter 1096 funnier than I originally thought. We know Rocks charged off ahead, telling the others to follow him. Whitebeard remarks that he is no follower of Rocks, and that he knows Rocks may lose sight of their goal. Which, again, right now we're speculating is Shaki. Now, Stussy, who we know wants Whitebeard, says, "Not you too, Newgate." So I think there's a little bit of a touch of jealousy there, right? Stussy's not happy that Newgate is chasing Shaki as hard as everyone else is chasing Shaki. Gloriosa also calls Stussy out for being so pathetic, so that was pretty funny. Now, most of the other crew members, they react in the same way, with the notable exception of Big Mom and kind of Kaido too. Big Mom says, "They'll be mine." Kaido says, "But you can't even use them." So we can be pretty sure that she is after the devil fruits. I would say probably for her family, not so much for her, because Kaido is right, and that she can't use them. And we actually see this in Kuma's backstory as well, when she steals what ends up becoming Kaido's devil fruit from Ivankov. And it also makes sense that she would have no interest in Shaki in the way most of the others do. So I kind of get why Big Mom was going for the fruits. And Kaido earlier mentioned that he wanted a fruit power as well. So it kind of makes sense that his focus perhaps is even more on the fruits as well. That or Roger, because he mentions something about Roger being the last man and then he gets cut off. So we don't actually know what he says there. With this being the likely setup for God Valley, why did Roger end up going against Rox during the event and not after, right? If you think they're both there to save Shocky from the world government, they might butt heads a little bit, but I would see more of a chance that they team up long enough to save her, get off the island, and then they settle their differences, like with a Davy back fight or something. That's not the way we've been told that it goes. And beyond that, what pushed Garp so far as to team up with Roger against Rox and protecting celestial dragons in the process, which we know Garp has absolutely no interest in? While Rox has shown us some redeeming qualities, at the end of the day, I think he is still pretty crazy. And so he must have done something to really show many of the people there that he is dangerous, not only to them, but frankly to the whole world. Now, it is possible he did something like hurting the innocent civilians there, something I don't see Roger, Garp, or even Whitebeard, who's on his crew, getting behind. But really, to push the unlikely alliance that he did together, I have a feeling he would have needed to do more than that. And so right now, I don't have any guesses on what his full plan entails, but what I do think is that Rox might have revealed both the existence of Emu and the details of his plan to those present on God Valley, perhaps in an attempt to get more of them to join his side. But whatever he is planning was probably horrible enough that no one opposing him could get behind it. This means it is so bad that Garp chose to both side with Roger, and they both chose to defend celestial dragons and others there over the possibility of Rox's plan potentially coming to fruition. And even that if they now know there's an actual ruler of the world, which, there's no saying Rox did reveal that, but there's a chance he could, they might not view that as bad as they view Rox potentially taking the spot himself. Now, we know this also comes long before Roger learned the truth of the world, and so I would not be surprised if what happens and what he learns on God Valley, or what he might learn on God Valley, becomes part of what led him in that direction. I'm also curious to see if Harold has a role to play here as well. We learned in the last chapter that for Elbaf to be accepted as a member nation, Harold must kill Rox. Is this something he will go for? That's a great question. Right now I'm leaning towards no, but we also know how much he wants to achieve his dream of having Elbaf join with the world government. And will this mean that Harold is going to somehow be involved in God Valley? I would say these are fitting questions because, we are in Loki's flashback, which heavily features Harold. So if Harold was at God Valley, it would make a lot more sense as to why God Valley is part of this flashback. And these events in general could surely lead up to what we know is the fall of Harold. And we know that the God Knights mentioned Harold's blunder. We also know that Elbaf never became a member nation, which does make me wonder, how the God Valley incident and Harold's actions, if he was there, may have played into that. And while it is yet to be fully confirmed, listen, it seems like Goon Valley might be a real thing. So what are your thoughts on this? Are you enjoying the flashback so far? Is there something here that I've totally missed that you would like to talk about? I'd love to hear it in the comments below. And with that, I hope that each and every one of you have an excellent rest of your day.